bit richer slowly, and most, though not all, developing countries are getting much richer, much faster. Here are the facts. Between 1980 and 2000, an astonishingly large number of countries, overwhelmingly developing countries, I think Ireland would have been the one developed country up in their midst, in the mix, achieved growth rates of over 5% per annum on average. I mean, that is unbelievably high. The first country in the world to transform from an agrarian society to an industrial society, the United Kingdom, hence the term the First Industrial Revolution, grew at a compound average rate of just over 2%. So 5% is massive by historical standards. And 50 countries between 1980 and 2000 achieved that. But by 2006, if we fast forward, the figure had grown to 104. So 104 countries had grown in that year at 5% or more. This is wealth creation on a scale that the planet has never seen. Now, I know that there's an international recession on at the moment. I am reasonably optimistic that we're slowly going to emerge from this, and I believe the signs are quite clear. This longer-term structural force will be back in play. I'm not quite sure whether we're talking about 2 years or 3 years, but it will be back in play. That is my personal, strong view. Now, the third element, the trade side. I believe that New Zealand faces the most promising situation in terms of world trade that New Zealand has seen for 40 years. Now, once again, I know that may sound a strange thing to say in the middle of the worst international recession for 70 years, where world trade is estimated to decline by 9% by the end of this year. But I'm not talking about the current situation, I'm talking about longer-term structural forces. In particular, what we have achieved is we have solved a problem that was a transcendent threat to New Zealand and New Zealand agriculture in particular, that has hung over our heads since 1973, when our then traditional market, the UK, disappeared into the then protectionist morass of what was called the EEC in those days, the European Economic Community. And into that protectionist mass disappeared the very foundations of the political formula that have been used for about 70 years in this country to keep this country on top. Now, I'm not going to try and describe to you what's happened in the last 40 years, even though it's dominated my professional life, and I know several people here have been farming political leaders over that period has dominated their contribution to the international farming political life too. I'm just going to tell you where we are. Because in my view, the international trade environment for New Zealand is replete with opportunities. It's good, and it's going to get better. And this is a new, I couldn't have said this 20 years ago. No way could I have said this 20 years ago. In fact, coming from Christchurch Airport with Don in the car, I said, you know, if we could actually, we're talking about this issue about use of water, potential to double our agricultural exports. 20 years ago, if I've been having this conversation with you, Don, I would have said, well, it's all academic. Where can we sell it? There were no markets open to New Zealand. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a dramatically different situation we face today. Let's just go through it. First of all, Australia, by far our largest export market, we have completely free access. One remaining issue on apples, and we're trying to get through that right now. Our second largest export market is China, just past the United States, we think, in terms of current export statistics. Just recall that when world trade is declining by 10% globally, our exports to China in the last 12 months have increased by a phenomenal 62%. I mean, this is a practical illustration of the general case I was arguing before. Within 10 years, we will have completely free access to what is already our second largest export market, to what is already the second largest economy in the world, and at some point, nobody's quite sure, but it's a few decades away, will become the largest economy in the world. And New Zealand is the only developed country to have that privileged position at the moment. That is sucking in imports from New Zealand, hence this massive growth in New Zealand exports. This is completely new to New Zealand. Southeast Asia. The 10 countries of ASEAN, or Southeast Asia, have now merged with the CDR in an agreement that I signed on behalf of New Zealand in February this year to create a new giant free trade zone called ANZFTA. Now, I know this sounds like a Middle European town somewhere near Bratislava, so don't blame me for the acronym, but what it does is merge the Australasian economies with Southeast Asia. Now, I'm not talking about a proposal, this is a done deal, and it will start to come into effect on the 1st of January next year. It's all done. This is a massive additional opportunity for New Zealand. 566 million people. We already have over $1 billion of exports to 4 or 5 of those countries. Prime Minister and I were in Kuala Lumpur about a week ago, launching an additional element to that strategy, an FTA with one of them, Malaysia, that will go further and faster for us. When you're talking about 4 or 5 markets already at $1 billion, you're talking serious money. This is an additional massive new market for New Zealand. We're concluding a negotiation with Hong Kong. I was up in Hong Kong about 10 days ago, having political level negotiations. We're not quite there, but we will get there. That will further cement New Zealand's privileged position in the Greater China market. I announced on Monday the completion of an FTA with the GCC, that's Oman, UAE, Bahrain, Saudi, and 2 or 3 others. Together, this is around about $1.3, $1.4 billion of exports. It's grown by over 200% for New Zealand since the year 2000. This is a new and huge opportunity for New Zealand. Dairy exports to the GCC, over 600 million. I had dinner with Henry last night, and he was, I can tell you, extremely pleased about this. The Korean FTA is under negotiations, going very, very slowly, as I would have expected, given the position of Korean agriculture, but we'll just soldier on. We are within political inches, if you like, or millimetres, of starting a negotiation with India, the other second emerging superpower in the developing world. This will take a long time. It will be very complicated. I don't quite know what will happen, but it's another massive opportunity. I'm still hopeful of completing an FTA or starting an FTA with the United States, not in the form that I and many others had envisaged, which would have been a bilateral FTA, but in the context of this new proposal called TPP, or Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, the United States is working through some issues there. I can't be sure that this will go ahead, but I personally am reasonably optimistic that eventually we will find a way of moving forward with the United States. And if that is correct, as I hope it will be, this will complete for many New Zealanders an ambition that people like me, many of you have had for 25 years for New Zealand. Above all this is the Doha Round, WTO Doha Round, and as you heard from the intro, I used to chair those agriculture negotiations. We're going around in circles, but I do not believe this will be the first negotiation since the war to fail. It's a matter of us just keeping the thing moving along until the right political moment arrives, and then we will get this deal done. I could be wrong, but I will be very surprised if this is the first. We've had 8 rounds of negotiations since the war, since 1947. They've all been a nightmare to conclude. This is no different, but none of them crucially has failed. So I still think this will happen. Now, I'm going through this list here to try and give you a picture that I'm not talking about wishful thinking here. I'm talking